to Horror Hour.
I see dead
We all go a little mad sometimes. Get you.
The dead follow.
You are going to die for me. Here's Johnny. It's all for you.
All right. Well, hello and welcome to the Horror Hour, place we discuss, we debate, we disagree on all things horror. I'm one of the co-hosts here, Yutaka. Hello. And today I'm really excited because I'm actually joined by no, see, I'm already getting nervous. So I'm joined with Bria Grant, actor, writer, director, producer. I mean, you do it all.
Yeah, I have a busy calendar.
So first off, kind of what got you into the genre of horror?
I think growing up a teenage girl, I think that's part of it. I mean, I always credit that with like the like I was really fortunate in that I was a teenager in the 90s, and like when you were a teenager in the 90s, we went to the theater every weekend anyway, and we got to be there for that like renaissance of horror where it's like Scream and and I Know What You Did Last Summer and all these kind of teen horror movies came out during that time, and so that really helped. And then also just going to slumber parties and watching horror movies. But then I think like what eventually happened was, I always had liked horror, and when I became an actress, they do this weird thing where they're like, what kind of stuff do you think you're good at? Are you good at drama, or are you good at comedy? And I was like, I think I do both, because I was entirely too confident. And but weirdly, what I did best was horror. And that's not an option when you're in these acting classes, but it ended up being great for me, and kind of like where I fell into was like horror, sci-fi genre stuff. And it was great because that was something I was already a fan of. So it was both like kind of what I got into, but also was definitely not running away from, was kind of happy to jump into it. Like if I had been like, oh no, now I'm on like a soap opera, I think I would have been pretty screwed. But instead I got to do the genre I wanted to do. So.
I think I was first introduced to you, like I'm a child of the 90s too. So I do remember going to either you're going to the theater or you're going to the video store and like checking out the new releases. But I was introduced to you via Heroes, which is another, one of my all-time favorites that I remember like watching weekly. I don't think you do that anymore now. I think it's the binge model, which not a bad thing at times. But yeah, so I love hearing that. And then I guess one of the other things then with that, as you're doing acting as well, then what kind of started to make you, or well, lead you towards, I want to write, I want to direct, and I want to produce. I mean, those are big leaps, and you've also done it really well. I can't wait to talk about your films. So like to me, that's anxiety inducing. So I'm just curious, as somebody who's like, just like leaping to all that.
Sure. Yeah, I tend to like leap in head first with like little reservation, which is not always, it's helped me most of my career, but not always. Wait, can I ask you a question? Have you rewatched Heroes like since it was like early 2000s? Because I just don't know how it holds up, because I know people were fans of it then, but it's not one of those shows. Like I was on Friday Night Lights too, and I feel like people, I don't know why I'm hijacking your podcast, by the way,
go for it.
But
this like makes me even feel more calm.
Okay, well, I feel like that people always tell me they're like, oh my god, you're on Friday Night Lights, I'm rewatching Friday Night Lights, or I'm rewatching Dexter, but I don't feel people are rewatching Heroes. And have you rewatched it? Do you have a theory about why this is?
I actually kind of own Heroes, so like, well, let me put this way. I wasn't a big fan of when it rebooted. I found that the original run, even though I felt like it was cut short, I feel like the stories were really good, and I just enjoyed the characters. And I think nowadays too, we don't get to have that. There was just so much diversity in terms of, at least in genre. Like, I remember growing up in the Midwest, and I never really felt represented in terms of seeing Asian representation. And so seeing somebody, be the center of that series was just like it. Like I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I. At that time though, I was like, well, it's all right. Like I have a career path that I believe I'm going to go down, but it was something that was very fresh, and I love
Yeah.
X-Men, all that stuff. So for me, it's still
Yeah.
a good binge.
Representation matters. It really does. And I do think like that was such an interesting part of that show where they were like, because if this did happen, it would happen all over the world. It wouldn't just be a bunch of people and white people in America with powers. Funny story about that show. When I was testing, I will answer your question, by the way. But you know, it's 4:00 my time, so I just start to not be able to focus. So welcome to what it's like to be around me at 4 p.m. When I was testing for that show, I was like, thought I was going to get the offer, and then they called and they were like, "Can you speak French? We're thinking about having her live in France." And I was like, "No, I'm from Texas." Like, also I went to like a very crappy public school. Don't tell anybody I said that. And like, so I'm not. No, like I don't speak French. And luckily they let me have the role anyway. Anyway, okay. Your question was, I jumped into acting. I jumped from acting to directing and writing. Yes. So actually, while I was on Heroes, it was weird because like, I think there's two kinds of actors. There's probably many kinds, but there's two kinds that I saw. And it was like, we to shoot one of those episodes was like between like 10 and 14 days. So it was really long shoot schedules. And I was a minor character. I mean, like I had a cool storyline, but it was like, I was there like 2 or 3 days per episode. And then I'd have the rest of the days off, but I wasn't allowed to travel. And there's like kind of two kind of actors, right? There's like the ones that can spend time with their family, like have a social life, do stuff. And then there was like me, who was like, I had waited tables my whole life. I'd had a job since I was like, you know, literally like 15 years old. And I felt like on those days off, I was like, what am I supposed to do with myself? And then I started writing comic books. And that was kind of my first entrance into writing. Was my brother and I wrote a couple comic books together. And that was when I started. And then after that, it felt like, okay, well, I'm going to write screenplays. And then it kind of snowballed from there, where it was just like, well, I'm going to write these screenplays. I should probably make the screenplays. And then I ended up doing all of it. My first book like came out in 2009, I think. And then I didn't direct my first movie till 2012-ish. It came out in like 2013.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. And that's amazing. Yeah. That's impressive. Like some, you know, like I guess when it comes to writing, I've always loved it, but I'm just not that creative in terms of like, I'll just lose my train of thought, as you can see. It's that ADD. Like,
no, it's real.
But you know, when it came to actually then kind of, you know, writing and directing, because why am I forgetting the name? It's not 12-hour shift. It's 12-hour. No.
That's 12-hour shift. Yeah.
But my goodness, see, nerves.
You're fine.
12-hour shift was okay. I really enjoyed it. I love that you said it, you know, in the 90s, but then you also had Angela Bettis.
Oh God, what a dream.
Name, right? Oh my God. Like, where did this story come from? Because it was wild, but I was just like, you know, I live in the Midwest. I'm like, I could see that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a little bit like an ode to like the small towns of America and all the weird stuff that happened. So I'm from a small town in East Texas, and I think I had written a lot of scripts, but I had never really written about where I was from, and I felt like I wanted to write something that reflected like the women I grew up with, and like set in the 90s. So it was like a time period I really knew. And then at the time, my dad has been sick off and on for 10, 15 years. And I was just spending a lot of time in hospitals. So I like was working on that, like trying to come up with something to write, and kind of like, you know, sitting in my own head. And I was like watching all these nurses do all this work. And that's kind of where it came from. There is a nurse who, so if people haven't seen it, it's about nurses stealing and selling organs on the black market. And there was a nurse in the 90s. I don't know if you remember the story, but there was one that was killing people through oh wow, my brain's not working either. But there's been a lot of nurses who've been sort of angels of death. But there was one in particular who was killing people through with the kidneys, whatever. We did it in the movie. But so it was kind of that story. So it was a bit of like urban legend inspired, a bit of that story, a bit of like my hometown, but also just like, I don't know, the original story was just Angela Bettis, and then I ended up adding all these side characters and giving them like full stories too. And yeah, I just kind of went from there. That was just like a fun one that I wanted to make that I felt like inspired to do, to show people like where I was from, with like a lot of like fun kinetic energy. Like I wanted it to feel energetic, you know, and
Oh, it is.
oh, good. Yeah, I wanted it to be like a nonstop ride, which those are the kind of movies I generally like. I mean, look, I'll get down with a slow burn. Like I'm fine. I directed slow
Sure.
burns. I like them, but that was one where I was like, I just feel like no one's gonna send this script to me, so I should like write the script that is the like fast paced,
Okay.
wild movie.
I love that. And I'm trying to think too, because I also remember one of the things that I remember seeing on YouTube, and I loved it, but it was The Real Housewives of Horror. I
Oh
need to kind of
yeah,
bring that up
thank
because
you.
it mixes both comedy and horror. And I mean, I love trashy TV, so I love the
Great.
fact that you were just everyone on that show was just giving 100, and I'm just like, oh, this
They're
I'm
so
giving my
funny.
life.
Yes, they're so funny, those women. Yeah, that was one. I was inspired by watching Real Housewives shows. Like for like a hot minute, I would watch a lot of them. I would like travel and then go to hotels, and that was like the first thing that was always, it was like always on. And so
Yeah.
you kind of knew it was going to be on. So it was this weird comfort thing. So I started watching it, and then yeah, I just was like, what if instead of married to like Orange County Millionaires, they're married to like, Freddy Krueger and Jason, and they're serial killers, and they're married to ghosts and stuff. And like, wouldn't that be funny? And weirdly, Nerdist gave me some money to make it, and I got to make it. It was very surreal getting to make that one. And I did not direct it. I wrote it, and then I brought on all these really, really funny women who just did a lot of really great improvising. And I feel super fortunate I got to make it. It was one of the, like
Oh
those women. I'm
wow.
all still friends with those women, and we talk about like how it was one of the most fun projects we ever got to do, because it was just so silly, and like we got to just, I mean, I like horror comedy, but it's so hard to do and you so rarely get to do it. And I feel like getting
Hmm.
to do that was just like one of the most fun experiences I've ever had on a set.
I
With
mean,
these, like it was like five women, and like none of them had egos. We kind of like all came in and did our own thing, and that was really exciting.
I love that, and the fact that you also all were improvising as well at times, like that's
Well, it was written for sure, but they were all
sure.
comedians, like Brooke Sagan, Laura Ortiz, like they're all like stand-ups, and improvisers. And so it's like I can't write something as funny as what you're going to come up with. So like I would write, some jokes and have some things ready to go, but between them and the director was this guy Sandeep Parikh, who he was on Felicia Day's show for a long time.
Oh, the guild.
He was on the Guild, and he's a great director, and like would always come up with really funny stuff. So it was like all of us just like throwing funny things at each other, and getting to make it. But it was a really good time. I'm glad you brought it up, because I don't get to talk about that one very much.
It's oh my gosh, it is a nonstop riot, honestly, and I'm just like, I want to live in that world because I was it kind of, yeah, I love Real Housewives, so to see
Yeah,
that just um and I do also want to bring up, because I am a huge fan of Eastsiders and Kit Williamson and just
oh
everybody else
yay,
that's been involved with that. And I know it's not horror, well, I guess
no,
sometimes it can be
it's
queer, like I certainly feel like a queer Asian in middle America, it can be, but
it can be hard.
you know I you worked with some of my favorite drag queens, but also you
Yeah,
got to, I mean, did you write the line, okay, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my or
at your brunch. I
yes.
think I did write that.
Oh my god. I
uh,
cannot with that
but like
line.
well delivered. I mean, that I think it was Willem who delivers that, or is that Stephen Guarino? Yeah, the most hilarious cast, again, like very smart, will do improv and stuff, but also like Kit encourages us to just write the funniest things. Yeah, so like I was in the wildest acting class back in 2009, 2010 or something, and Kit Williamson was in it. And it was wild because all those people kind of went on to do something really interesting. Like Constance Wu was also in it, and that's where
Mhm.
the three of us met. And I'd already done television and stuff, and then I went on to direct a movie, and Kit is in that first movie I did, which I did that back in 2012. And when we were making it, he's like, I think I'm going to make something of my own. And so with like, you know, a dollar and a prayer, he made that first season of Eastsiders. And it was, I mean, he made it like literally he's shooting in my house, in his house. Like it's just a very, very small show. And then kind of grew from there to the point where in the season 4, we had a writer's room that I was in. I got to direct. And it was just it was so fun to like work with friends. I mean, like people I'd known for a long time, and he's just really good at getting people on board. Oh, it's so weird you're saying that because I worked on another show from him that hasn't come out yet. And I'm like, I almost just like talked about it like as if you've seen it, but it hasn't come out yet.
I'm ready for that. I've heard, I've seen some clips. I am like, when is it coming out? Unconventional.
And it premiered at Outfest. Like they played the first 3, which I did not write any of those, but they're great. And then I wrote and directed the 4th one. I think it's the 4th one, but it's really great. Great stars. Like Kid is in it, and he just has such a creative mind, and he's able to sort of tap into something that I don't think people were making when we made Eastsiders. Like I mean, he would always say this, and I try to, you know, I give him credit because he was like, there'll be like one queer show a year. And then the networks are like, that's enough. Like that seems like that's enough. Like that's not enough for any show, much less like queer shows where there's like so many queer people and non-queer people who want to, you know, watch them. So that was always his theory. He's like, there's always room for us. There's enough room for us. Like we need to quit waiting around for people to do it, give it to us. And to his credit, he went and made that show all by himself. And then we ended up with this output deal on Netflix. And that was huge, obviously, when it went to Netflix. But before that, it was like, you know, on YouTube, or like for a little while, I was on.
What was it? Logo or
it was on Logo for a minute, but I don't think is Logo a channel anymore. I should know that answer.
Yeah, I think so. Like,
okay,
but I mean,
Netflix was
like,
huge.
Yeah, like it was trending. People were so excited that they got closure. I think you guys were also nominated for a Daytime Emmy Award.
Emmys. I have a Daytime Emmy nom for my writing on that show because the whole room got nominated, which is all Kit. I mean, that's like Kit is he's just a powerhouse, and like I feel very honored to be a part of his friend group and creative group. He's in 12-hour shift also, so like we kind of call each other to do stuff, and it's great because he's someone I know I can always call and be like, I'm going through a thing, and he'll like tell me straight, you know, and then I'll do the same for him. Or like if I'm going to go, I think he's just such a brilliant actor, and I think he's a great comedic actor, and he doesn't get to do it often. And so I'm always trying to like cast him, you know, I cast him as the like straight cop in 12-hour shift, which you love. And I love like him coming, like, you know, we went and shot that in Arkansas, and it was nice to know like I had someone that like, oh my gosh, this has been a really long day. I can like go into his room and like have a glass of wine with him, and like someone I've been friends with for 10 years and be like, okay, got to talk about, you know, like I'm his director, but I can also be his friend, which is, it's nice. It's nice to have those people in your life.
I love that. I mean, and yeah, when Eastsiders, oh man, I wish we still had more queer content, but it was something that I was like, I'm so happy that I got to see that. And then obviously, you know, speaking of, well, this isn't speaking of queer content, but I have to, I do want to move on to, it's, we, on one of our episodes that's going to come out, we talked about hidden gems on Shudder, and I want to call out because I love this one, The Stylist.
Oh, great. Yeah.
What was it like being in that? I mean, I wish more people had seen it, and I'm hoping more are discovering it, because I see that Jill is very active about still promoting it, which I love, but it is a great film.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's such a good film. Yeah, I've been friends with Jill for a while, and she made a short of it. And then she reached out to me at some point when I was in post on 12-hour, and she was like, would you want to come be in The Stylist? I can send you the script. And I was like, you don't have to send me the script. I'll come do it. Like, I was like, and funnily, it's the last movie I did. I mean, I've stepped back from acting, but it was the last movie I did. And it was like such a nice, wonderful experience because Najara is lovely and Jill's really a brilliant director. But it was just like, it was really fun. I mean, I just thought that was such an interesting idea for a script, and you don't get to see, you know, you don't get to see a female serial killer very often. And I think I'm often drawn to like very complicated, bordering on evil women. That's something I'm fascinated by, because I think it is, I like, we get to see all these evil men, and like, how does it differ to be an evil woman? And I think I'm just drawn to the darkness, and I want to see it, and I put it in my movies a lot. And like, that was one that was just super fascinating, because it was not only this woman who was like a serial killer, but also had like crippling social anxiety. Like, it's just like such a fascinating character.
I look, you know, there's so much wealth of talent and stories out there that we don't often get to hear. And I like that. I would say like Cold Open, setting up the salon,
Mhm.
the, you know, private customer comes in. I was just like, okay, oh. I was like,
Mhm.
and then you see like the basement. I love that. And
Yeah,
I
it's
would like to
great.
see more of that. I'd like to see more, honestly, female stories or female centric, because well, I shouldn't say we're finally. I think they're being pushed more to the spotlight finally. And let me say that, yes, they've always been there, but I don't think that we've gotten the eyeballs that we now have on it.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of them have been very like female centric stories with a really virtuous female lead. Like, I'm very like, oh, we can cheer for her because, you know, in the 80s she was a virgin or whatever, and then after that she was like, maybe she was a nerd or something, but like, she was always this like kind of virtuous character who could do no wrong. And I think what's interesting now is like, what if they are doing wrong? Can you still cheer for them? Like, and what does that, those questions are really interesting to me. And I find that's like the number one thing I'm always drawn to in scripts, where it's these characters who are like kind of not great people, and are we still going to cheer for them? Like, that was the whole thing. When I talked to Angela about doing 12-hour shift, I was like, I want a female anti-hero. Like, I just don't feel like we have them very often. And like, what do they look like? And I mean, look, I'm not trying to say like we should be them. I'm just saying, like, what do they look like in our world? And because I've seen the male versions for so long, like, what happens if you create this like female anti-hero?
No, I mean, we need more of it. And personally, like, I think, you know, we saw Pearl this year, where we
Oh,
saw
lovely.
like
Wow.
that was really
Oh my
good
God.
too. But
I know, I loved it.
I want to see more of that. And
Mm.
you know, I will also then also kind of highlight what you directed, something that, my gosh, I've probably seen way too many times because I just love it so much, and that's Torn Hearts.
Oh, good. Oh, wow.
I've probably double digits because it's easy to watch.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. And you know, I still remember the first time watching, I'm like, okay, I'm really digging the music too. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, what the, like, it took some turns. And
Mhm.
what was it like, you know, directing that film?
I mean, great. Again, you got your female anti-heroes, which is so fun for me. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, you know, as a horror person, the dream is to work for Blumhouse. You know, that was my dream. So when I got that call, I was like, yeah, I'll pitch on this movie. And Rachel had written this really interesting script, I thought, and I felt like I could do something really interesting with it visually and with the characters, and really diving into the characters. And yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I feel so fortunate to have gotten to make that movie, but also like I had a really, really good time, to the point where, I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm kind of at this point in my career where I'm like, I don't care if people like it, because like I had so much fun making it. I had so much fun making it, because it was just, and you could probably tell like we were just having a blast. So, you know, like, you have this character, Harper Dutch, who's this country music icon, legend, and I was like, well, I don't want to go with, I want someone big. And those movies, we shoot them really fast. So like, I only had like a month of prep. So like, I had to like find the movie, get the movie together, and then get actors on board within that month. And Katie was my first and only choice, basically. And because she could sing, and she just has such like gravitas as a performer. And I knew she would bring something interesting without making it like too over the top, you know? And she did, and she was so excited to come do a horror movie. I mean, she was definitely like, seemed unsure at first, and then she was like, okay, maybe I can go do a horror movie. And I just think she just like made the movie, like, she like
she
the first day
nailed
she was
it.
there, she nailed it. And she walked on set the first day. And you know, like with her, I don't get any rehearsal time. With the other young women, I got rehearsal time, but you know, a day or two. I didn't get much, but at least I got to see them, and they also auditioned, so I knew what they'd be like. But she and I had a lot of conversations about the character, and like why I was drawn to the character, why I thought she was really interesting. And she was really drawn to her because she felt like she had this this kind of like remorse following her around and regret, and she had felt like she had a do-over, and how that was like just really plaguing her. But she walks on the set the first time, and I could feel the crew just like suddenly, like an active loud set went like silent. Like it was like they were so polite and they were just listening to her, and I was like, okay, I see what it's like to have like a super famous person on set, like really like controlling the mood. And she was great. I mean, she's so funny, and like in real life, I mean, she's funny in her acting as well, I think, but she's like a really funny, nice, warm person. And it was just such a joy to make. And I think Abby and Alexis just knocked it out of the park. The two leads, I think they're just amazing, wonderful talents. And yeah, I just had a really, really good time. Like it was such a fun time to making that movie, getting to do the music. Like, oh, what a dream.
Like, I mean, Katie was so devious. I'm like, I don't know if I've seen this side, and I loved it. Coming down the stair, I was just like, dang, like just the shot, and I'm like, it's so memorable. And then I love the color palette you had going on.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was my dream always, is to do a movie with like a very strong color palette. And I told the production designer early on, so that house, if people have seen this, they cannot believe this, but when we got into that house, it was empty. There was not anything in that house. So we moved everything into that house and painted all the walls. And like, so it was like a lot of work for my poor production designer. And then we built, the basement's just a build. Like we had to start from scratch on that. We're starting from scratch kind of for both of them. But yeah, it was a total, I mean, the chandelier was there and there was like one table or something. It was like very little was in that house. But it was nice because I've always wanted to like kind of build something from the ground up, because I'm very moved by my environment. Like I think that's coming from acting, where like, you know, as an actor, I'd be like, oh, I'm in this cool space these people built, and it would like shape how my performance. And I think it really shapes how I work as a director too. And so like to fill a house and like, you know, Grey Gardens up a house essentially,
Yes.
and like getting to work with like a specific color palette. I mean, my note to the production designer was, I was like, there should not be a frame in which we don't see pink. Every frame has pink. And that's true if you watch it. I believe
I will
someone
be
can call me.
that tonight.
Let me know. I haven't rewatched it in a minute. But that was my goal, is every frame has pink. Every frame has like a little bit, like you'll just see just enough. But yeah, it was a blast to get to like create that world. And since it was like such a specific world, I got to really like, you know, hone in on it and play with it. Whereas like, you know, doing 12 Hour, it's a hospital. Like there's only so much I can do there. Whereas this one, I got to like really like dive in and like get it gritty. I call it like, it's like maximalist production design, which I love.
Like kudos. I did not like, wow. I mean, I love that house, but that's incredible that you all did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to also call out the Abby and Alexis, that fight scene
Oh, thank you.
I just want you to know, like, if I had seen that in theaters, that would have been like, I would have been snapping. I would have.
Oh, thank you.
I lost it. I was like, oh, this went there.
Yeah. And we never see, like, my theory, I was like, okay, we never see two women fight, right? Like, that's like, it's very rare. Or when we do, they're like professional fighters. Like, they're really good at fighting. And so my whole thing to my stunt coordinator, I was like, they don't know how to fight. Like they shouldn't be good at this. It should be messy. It should be sloppy. They should be uncomfortable. Unfortunately, like they're both like athletes, so they both were like way better at fighting than they should have been. Like I had to be like messier. Like you can swing wide, you know, whatever. I mean, their stunt doubles they had really great stunt doubles too. Yeah, so that was like such a dream to get to put into the movie and like have this physical fight between these women, because I was like, right. I mean, like if Harper's gonna pit them against each other, it's gonna be, you know, she's gonna go psychological. She's gonna, you know, play on their egos. But like, what about physical? Like, you don't ever see that in female genre movies. Like, it's you do if she's like fighting the serial killer or fighting Jason or something. But two women,
like best friends.
Interesting. I know, and like in a way where they're supposed to be loving. I just felt like it was so dark that I wanted to go there.
It was. I mean, it was gritty and
it's a physical. I think a physical like example of what happens in the industry on a non-physical way. Like and that like my friends and I as directors, as writers, we're all pitted against each other, and like just the way in which women are pitted against each other. And I could show that physically on screen. That felt important to me.
I mean, it was enjoyable to watch, but it was gut wrenching because they're two best friends. This is their dream, but in order to achieve it, they've got to spill a little blood.
Yeah,
It's a good scene.
Yeah.
What I'd like to know then, I feel like this past year, just this past 365 days, even going back into the last like November or so, has been great for horror. And I would love to know what has excited you about the genre. Is there something, either a movement, talent behind or in front of the camera, or a theme that you're seeing that you're enjoying?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot to be excited about. One, that we're getting back, some of us are able to go to theaters again, and there's genre movies dominating the box office, like horror, just cheap horror movies. I mean, cheap, as compared to like a Marvel movie or something, dominating. Like, that's very exciting and really great for me as a filmmaker. Like, I'm like, thank you, Smile. Like, thank you.
Exploded.
Yes, thank you. That is helpful to all of us. I don't know, I feel very fortunate because most years I go to a festival called Fantastic Fest out in Austin, and get to see all sorts of great movies. And I got to go this last year, in like a couple months ago. And for me, there's a lot of interesting foreign horror that's happening. Like, that has been really, really exciting to see. Like, there was a movie called Piggy that I thought was amazing. I don't know if you've seen.
I saw that at Sundance. Oh my God. Yeah. I love the question it posed.
I did too. And also I loved, again, a complicated woman. Like, women are complicated. We're not always going to make the right choices. We're going to make complicated choices. And like, especially if you're a woman like that, who's been mistreated by women. I mean, I can't quit singing the praises of this movie, but you've been mistreated by your peers for so long. And then you have this moment where like everyone expects you to be a hero. Like, that just blew my mind. So I think like that is really interesting. I mean, I am always looking up to and finding these female directors that are doing amazing things. I just watched Sissy over on Shudder, which I can't say enough great things about. God, I think that's so good.
I saw that at Overlook, and it just, I was like, I was not expecting the twist.
Was not expecting.
I was just, I mean, that was a great film.
Yeah, I guess like at the end, the theme of this this podcast that we're doing is I like fucked up women. I like women who are not quite, they're not perfect, and that is really interesting to me, is like the messiness of like the female experience. I like, that is always really interesting to me, and I'm just like not interested in doing things that don't involve that. So, and that's kind of what I've been drawn to in the last, I like, those are the movies that really stand out to me. And look, I just think there's fascinating things going on with genre, like Barbarian having like that cut to Justin Long, like that I've talked about so many times, because I'm like, we're getting away with stuff in horror that other people are not getting away with, and that feels very exciting because we're breaking new ground, I think, as far as like structure and like what we're being allowed to do as far as like mainstream movies, which that movie was again made for very little money and did amazingly well.
Somebody, I think it was Jason Ragasta, had told me, he's like, we're watching this, and he's like, you think you know who the monster is, but you don't. And like, that movie was so like, it was unhinged. I was just like, wow. It was, again, horror. It was just so refreshing. And yes, it dominated very well, or it did very well at the box office. I will always call out Terrifier 2 as well, because that shocked everybody.
I haven't seen it. Do I need to see this movie? I did not see the first one, so like I didn't see it. I don't know.
These are two totally different films, though. That's what's crazy. The first one was dark and gritty and still had a little bit of like black comedy in it. But then the second one goes, to me, like full on 80s Dream Warriors.
Interesting.
Camp. And I'm like, what the hell? Just and I was just like, I was not expecting that. And I think it's also impressive if you can do almost 2.5 hour horror film. And I mean, I wanted more at the end of it. Like, I was so engaged. But I know it's not for everybody because I'm a gore hound. So
Oh, I see.
if you're not a gore hound, I would easily
Yeah.
say that might not be the best one.
Okay. Okay. I'll
Um,
eventually see it. I will see it. I try to see anything that isn't too disturbing, but
It
Yeah.
brought a new, in my opinion, a new Final Girl that I think people were really excited to see, and I think the
Oh.
actress has been just very outspoken, and I just, I enjoy seeing people who are very open and honest, and she will stand up. I think she kind of got in a Twitter feud because some guy was mad because they didn't see boobs, and she's like, "What? That's not the
Oh my
purpose of
God.
the film." She
Yeah.
read him to filth, and I go,
Oh,
"Thank God."
great. Good,
Like, I
good.
was like, that needs to happen because
Yeah.
I would say, speaking of also, well, the other thing is we're getting performances with strong women. Like, I don't know, have you seen Run, Sweetheart, Run?
I haven't seen it yet, but it looks good.
That's a good one.
Okay.
I mean, I love the idea behind it though, is she just wanted to make a movie about shitty white men and somebody like persevering. Yeah, they had to go through hell but they had to do it on their own. It was, and Ella Balinska, she nailed it. And
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm excited to see it. It's on my list for sure. Hopefully over the holiday I'll get more watching done. Sometimes I realize I haven't like watched a movie in like weeks because I'm working. It's horrible because the main thing I should do is watch a movie, which is why I try to go to festivals as a viewer, not just like as a filmmaker, because like I started as a fangirl. I've been a fan, like I've been a, comic book nerd reading fan, since my early 20s. And like I try to remember, like, that's the reason I wanted to act. That's the reason I wanted to get into all of this. And so I try to go to something like Fantastic Fest or something like that and just buy a badge and just go see as many movies as possible. Cause then I'm like, okay, this is my job for the week. It's just to watch movies. And that feels like something I can actually accomplish.
Fantastic Fest, I didn't get to go in person, but I did the virtual, and I would also have to say I agree that there's a lot of great foreign films
So many good
coming,
ones.
but I will again kind of come back to Piggy because I saw that twice at Sundance. I'm like, I go, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need more of that.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
what I'd like to then finish up with is, what do you have that you can't talk about? What do you have coming next?
Wow, I don't know. Call my manager and ask him. No, he'd be mad I said that. Yeah, I mean, I'm working on more stuff, more directing. It looks like more writing. I write a lot, and I have some stuff coming up. I think, there's going to be some stuff that are for other people, some stuff for me, and yeah, I mean, definitely unconventional when it comes out, which
I can't wait.
Seems like it'll be sooner rather than later now, so that's exciting.
Yay.
Yeah, that was such a wild process because we shot it independently, and then now it's gonna go somewhere else. It's
Oh wow.
I don't know. Now Kit's inventing a new model for television, which is just wild to me. So but yeah, so that's definitely worth checking out if people like fun queer drama, which who doesn't? But
Our lives are messy. I mean, I'm sold. But well then, I hopefully we get to see more horror from you. I really do enjoy like, this is, I will say, for me as a fanboy as well, this is kind of a moment because I've enjoyed you in the genre, but I love seeing you that you're writing, directing, but you're also putting out new stories. And we need that because, I mean, let's be serious. It's been pretty male dominated. We're very white. And so it's nice to get to see new stories because I want it. I desperately crave that. And so it makes me very happy when people are putting that out there. And also independent horror, it's killing everybody right now. And that's what I'm so happy about.
Truly. I mean, I totally agree. The independent genre stuff is really like kicking ass out there, and I'm happy that it is.
Well, I want to say thank you so much to our listeners, to our watchers. Thank you, and till next time.
Yep. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Horror Hour. See you next time.